This episode of Recording Studio Rockstars is brought to you by Atom Audio, iZotope, Native Instruments, Empirical Labs, Soundporter Mastering, and Trace Audio. You're hearing my voice right now through custom Trace Audio cables and the new Empirical Labs pump compressor mixed through iZotope RX, Ozone, Neutron, Nectar, and Plasma, all mixed on Atom Audio monitors. Please check out our awesome sponsors using the links in the show notes. It's a great way to help support this show. Now get ready to rock.
In version 4, I can go and change the EQ, and it doesn't matter because it saves with the session. I can turn it back or whatever, you know? And it's like, to me, if we're talking about a 5% difference between the analog sounding quote-unquote better than the plugin, but I can do all kinds of stuff with the plugin that I wouldn't probably do in my boxes. I don't have to want to recall it and do a new sheet or whatever it is, laziness. Then the plugin's better in a way.
Welcome to Recording Studio Rockstars. I'm Lid Shaw, and this is the podcast created to help you become a rock star of the recording studio. Empirical Labs, creators of the famous Distressor, offer high-performance gear for audio pros. The Fatso adds warmth to digital recordings with harmonic generation, tape emulation, and compression. The Pump, a 500 series compressor, features 8 selectable ratios, precise attack and release controls, saturation, and an attack mod for incredible transient control. The Arouser and Big Freak plugins are also available at empiricallabs.com, where you can use the coupon code RSR10 for 10% off. Follow at Empirical Labs on Instagram, making studio gear that works a little easier, a little better, and a lot longer. Native Instruments introduces the new Complete 15 bundle, featuring Contact 8, offering versatile synths, sampled instruments, and innovative effects. Perfect for creating everything from emotional scores to dance floor grooves. Contact 8 includes exciting new creative tools like chords and phrases for inspiration, the Leap tool for dynamic looping, and Conflux, a hybrid instrument blending organic and synth sounds. The Complete 15 bundle also includes updated Massive X, Guitar Rig 7 Pro, and AI-enhanced iZotope Ozone 11. Use the code ROCK10 for 10% off at nativeinstruments.com. Howdy, Rockstars. It's your host, Lid Shaw, and welcome back to Recording Studio Rockstars, bringing you into the studio to learn from recording professionals so that you can make your best record ever and be a rock star of the studio yourself. My guest today is Matty Harris, a music producer, mixing and mastering engineer, originally from Boston. As a young musician, he won several awards, including Best Drummer in New England, touring with jazz, blues, and calypso bands, playing clubs by the age of 14, and later went on to Berklee College of Music to study music production and engineering. Matty's work in the studio includes credits for Atlantic, RCA, Warner Brothers, Sammy Adams, A$AP Rocky, Logic, Little Yachty, Cousin Stizz, and Grammy Award-winning song Stronger for Kelly Clarkson. In 2008, winning the Boston Music Award for Best Hip-Hop Engineer and Producer. He mixes from his own studio in Los Angeles and is host of the popular YouTube channel Mix and Master My Song, teaching you how to mix and master music in your own studio. I love Matty's videos. They're great. I highly recommend you check them out. Matty has been a guest on the show before to talk about his backstory and share some of the great mixing tips with us on episodes RSR479 and RSR475, so you can check those out as well. And those will actually be in the playlist link below. Today, we're going to continue talking about mixing with digital controllers, how plugins have gotten so good he doesn't use his analog outboard gear anymore, and how you can dial in your studio and tune your room for professional quality monitoring, plus lots of other cool stuff we can think of as we're chatting. So please welcome back Matty Harris to Recording Studio Rockstars. Matty, you ready to rock, dude?
Always ready to rock with you, man.
Glad to have you back with us, dude. It's always a pleasure to see you. Last time I saw you, mean, this will be coming out later, but I saw you when we were back at NAMM, and it was fun to like walk around and
Yeah, we had a blast that day. That was a good time.
check out all this stuff. You know what was fun about that too is realizing like the convergence of different worlds. Like everything I do is with bands and, you know, the Nashville scene, and you've got this whole world of 808 music and hip hop and rap and all kinds of stuff. And you're so comfortable in that zone. And I'm just like, what's that, man?
No, yeah, man, it's cool. And I love the Nashville zone too. I mean, I've been mixing some country records this year and stuff. So that's been really cool. Digging into that world as well, you know? So that's why I love hanging with you, because you're a big source of all that information.
So what's the latest with you, man? I mean, we've already talked about your whole background in music and everything. But you know, you got anything new going on in your studio setup? It's always fun to like hear what your world looks like.
I mean, musically, I worked on some cool stuff in the last year. I got to work with this new artist on Universal named Kuko with my friend Anthony. And he does this it's like almost like trippy rock, but different. He's really cool to check out. And he did like the main stage of Coachella this year, so it was cool. And then I got to work on this Huddy album, mixing with my buddy Anthony. And that had Travis Barker playing drums, which was really cool to just get the files from Travis, and, you know, his drums just sound great already. And then, you know, you just didn't.
And Travis is Blink 182, is that right?
Yeah, Blink 182, yeah. And
yeah,
so
I remember there was, at one point I was looking at a multi-channel headphone mixer on Reverb or something that was like, this is Travis's and it's up for sale now. You can
really? That's awesome. But yeah, that was really cool to work on. So musically, I got to work on some stuff that's like expanding my range. And I'm really digging doing a lot more like live stuff. Whereas you know, I've been known as a hip hop pop guy for so long. To expand into some new worlds is awesome, especially growing up as a drummer. And like, I love live music almost more than programmed music. And so it's cool to start working on some projects like that.
So when you say live, do you mean specifically like recorded from the live stage, or live just as in band playing together in the studio?
Yeah, live just as in band playing in the studio, you know, like guys actually playing the instruments. Whereas, you know, the hip hop stuff a lot of time is programmed by one guy.
Yeah.
And I mean, maybe they'll have a keyboard player come in, but it's usually a pretty like one-on-one thing.
You know, when I think about the difference between those, I mean, they're obviously different styles, but I feel like one of the differences between working with music that's sample-based and programmed versus live instrumentation is that the sample-based in the program world, it's like the sounds are already they almost begin in a state of control on a certain level, maybe.
Yeah.
Like they might be pre-mixed a little bit.
Yeah. The biggest challenge I find mixing music in the hip hop world or pop world is a lot of times just getting the bass right? Because it's such a bass heavy music, and you have like a lot of times an 808 and a kick going on, and you got to pick which one's going to win the battle, you know? And so getting that to work is usually the bigger challenge there. And then of course mixing the vocals, which is always a challenge. But yeah, it's, you know, they're different, completely different beasts, and it's fun, you know, solving. I always like look at mixing as like solving puzzles, you know, like, so like it's cool solving different kinds of puzzles. So lately, like I've been having more live stuff come in the door. And when I say live, I mean, like actually bands, guys recording band stuff. Yeah. And it's cool to have both. Like one day I'm doing like 808 stuff, and the next day I'm doing live stuff. And I think my live band stuff is a little unique the way I mix, because I'm so used to bass heavy music. And so a lot of the guys, like, they're like, wow, man, the bass and the drums are like so strong on this. And it's just because I've come from a different background, and where a lot of, you know, sometimes band stuff is a little bit thinner in the low end. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's kind of it's a unique thing. That's been kind of fun to expand into.
Do you sometimes feel like when you're doing the band stuff, you're trying to get the band sounds to sound closer to a sample and then go from there? Or Is it really just such different styles that it's just different approaches all around?
Yeah, I think it's such different styles. Like, what's cool right now to me in music is I feel personally that hip hop's on its way out. And I feel like this next generation of musicians are actually like, there's guitars back. You know what I mean? If there's like, there was a stat recently where like hip hop sales or numbers are down like 30% last year. And there's this one website, what's it called? Hit Music Deconstruction. I don't know if you ever checked it out, but it like it's like science for music, and it breaks down all the stats of different things. And what you see is the on the chart is guitars are going up and like 808s are going down on like what instruments are being used the most. And I'm hearing it a lot in the music. Like it's different now. Like the newer generations, like it's a lot more live instrumentation being used. And there's a lot of that angst and like guitar and distortion of music that like I grew up on, you know? So I'm really digging, you know, the direction I think that music might be heading in the next few years.
Do you think, so a couple of thoughts on that is, are some of these guitars still coming from sample places like Splice and things like that?
They very well could be. So that's what it feels like. It's just such a mix of everything that some are guitars, some are live drums, some are samples of live drums. You know, it's like a very hodgepodge sound on some of these artists like Eric DOA and who else was kind of doing that stuff? A few other artists. And it's just a different kind of sound. And it's funny because a lot of it's been created by people not understanding how to use the software they're using. And it's just like, this sounds crazy, distorted and like great. And then it creates the actual sound that they're going for, you know, which could be a nightmare to mix, but it's, you know, it's a different thing.
Yeah, no, that's cool. You know, and when I think about a lot of the band stuff that I really love, like when Nick Krill was on the show and we were talking about how great these productions and mixes sound that he was working on, I think a lot of those do come from that combination of like, it's a live band thing, but we're creating it with programmed drums and samples, but maybe it's like mashups of programmed drums, but then there's fills that are live.
Yeah.
And those fill sounds might be treated in such a way that they sound like a sample.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
that's a great way to put it. It's like, it definitely feels like a hodgepodge of different worlds colliding in a way with a lot of the newer stuff that I've been receiving.
Right. But then at the same time, if I look back on the history of live band stuff, I mean, this isn't going all that far back, but I was hearing the Strokes playing over the radio a little while ago. And I specifically remember like that stuff was already doing, you know, they were already doing clever mashups of band in the studio, but then there's still like, you know, programmed stuff going in that sounds like a live drum kit, but it's super controlled and precise.
Yeah, for sure. And even, I mean, you could even go back as far as Beck. Like Beck was really big into putting those worlds together, right? In his first.
Yeah, I mean, he was all about the sampler, right?
Yeah. But he had like a lot of live stuff too. And then his new stuff's mostly live, which is interesting.
Yeah, I remember Matt Mahaffey, who's also been on the show, he would get invited sometimes to go do sessions with Beck, and they would just book out a studio like Blackbird here for days with live musicians and just jam.
I know.
Just jam and play and then like take it all later and chop it up and turn it into stuff. I've never really done that. I would love to do some stuff like that. I know it's a lot of work.
Yeah. But I mean, a lot of people make, you know, sample libraries from doing that kind of stuff too, you know?
Yeah. That's a lot of work though, really.
Yeah. But there's a whole niche there to do, you know?
Yeah. Have you done any recording sessions that are kind of like that, like jamming and building samples or built sample libraries yourself?
Not really. I mean, I haven't done a recording session in probably about 10 years, but
really focused on the mixing. Yeah.
Mostly mixing. Yeah. But when I was working in the studios, and then I mean, I was producing a bit at one point too, is we would just take drums and play them and then chop them up and do stuff. So I would do that on my own a lot, but I don't remember too many sessions of guys coming in to hey, we're going to do this,
Yeah. Every time I think about making a record that way, I'm like, I can see jamming and grabbing a loop, but then sometimes the clever ways that people insert, builds and transitions into the pre-chorus and fills that take you into the chorus that sound, it's like you've got the loop drums, but you've got these perfect fills that sound like a perfect match. And it's kind of amazing to me,
Yeah. I know I tried, was a Superior Drummer the other day. I just got the demo.
Yeah.
And it's crazy. All the stuff you can just hit 2 buttons and you have a whole, like what sounds like a pretty close, like a real drummer on there,
Yeah. Were we, was I hanging out at NAMM with you when we went by the kit demo?
Yeah. So they got, like you said, like they have theirs coming out too. Yeah. And I think it's the same kind of thing. I don't even know if it came out yet. I got to reach out to those guys.
I think well, by the time this is out, it'll be out, but
right.
Yeah. So sometimes rock stars, we get introduced to stuff at NAMM, and then it's coming out, months later or whatever, which we got some more things to talk about related to that. For example, SSL using controllers,
yes.
and stuff. So tell us what else is new in your studio setting there. So you've been mixing more live stuff, but any gear change out for you too?
Yeah, so gear-wise, things have been changing in a bit. I did recently get the Softube Console 1 MK3.
Cool.
Which I've done some reviews on. And then I wanted to match it with something like just to have a fader. I love having at least a single fader. And so I tried this SSL, the UF-1, right? And so for me lately, that combination of the Console 1 and the UF-1 is awesome. It's like, because it's so hard to sometimes not just use a mouse. Like it's so easy to just use the mouse, but having these two, it feels like it's an extension of the mouse. So I can still do mouse things, but like every channel has the Softube on it and the knobs all correspond to what it's going to do. So like low cut, high cut, compression, stuff like that, I can just reach for and turn. And then the fader is on the UF-1 and then it has transport as well. And I can also program knobs on that to change settings on plugins that the Softube doesn't work with.
And then, so I always wonder about that when it comes to the transport thing. There's a lot of controllers that some will throw a transport on, some MIDI controllers will, some won't. And I think when I've had one, I've sometimes used it.
Yeah.
Do you find, but I also felt like the space bar is just right there,
100%. Yeah. I mean, the transport I rarely do use, although I will say it has the loop and the loop and the automation settings and the click buttons I use a lot.
Yeah.
So I'll hit those a lot. And then sometimes it's just right there and I'll just hit play on the transport. Especially if I'm like hitting a loop and then I hit play instead of going to the space bar. But yeah, I'm a space bar guy 99% of the time.
When would you use, if you're mixing a lot, when would you use the loop function as part of your mixing routine?
A lot of times I'll loop like a chorus or a verse, depending on, what I'm working on. I tend to sometimes get the chorus going first when mixing, just because usually that's where most of the information is going to be and stuff. Yeah. It's a good place just to kind of loop and just get your settings and your levels right, and then you can move on to other parts of the song.
Right, because especially, and this is something that we talked about with Craig Alvin as well, but especially in the big super chorus, there's a good chance you might have the most shit in your mix, right?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that's when it's going to be the loudest. It's when it's going to be hitting the most. And so you can get a lot of your mix done just staying in the chorus and then go through and start building dynamics and so forth through the rest of the song. But yeah, so I'll use the loop a lot in situations like that. Or if I'm just trying to hear one section over and over again to get something that's bugging me right, it's a good time to use it there.
Yeah, and when there's all that stuff in the super chorus, it also means that whatever stuff you're using on your mix bus, whatever routing effects, all that are most likely going to fail, right? Like it's like,
right.
Most likely you're going to have things masking other sounds where you can't really hear the part, or like the compression's going to just get overloaded, or it's going to sound mushy, or you're going to lose the bass and the kick and the whatever.
Yeah,
So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I always set my mix bus settings in the chorus because it'll be fine everywhere else.
Right. Sick of searching for the right cable or wondering how to hook up your studio? Trace Audio has you covered. Based in Nashville but serving studios everywhere, Trace Audio specializes in custom cables, patch bay labels, and wiring solutions for home and pro studios. Try out the free online custom patch bay label designer at traceaudio.com to easily color code, label, and organize your XLR or quarter-inch bays, which are popular with home studios. It's sleek, professional, and simple to use. Then use the code RSR15 for 15% off printing and shipping your custom patch bay labels to take your studio to the next level.
Someone asked me a while back, do you fear AI will one day replace you as a mastering engineer? Well, it hasn't yet. That's because algorithms don't listen to music or to clients. Hi, I'm Brian Murphy of Sound Porter Mastering. When I master, I experience the music as your fans will, with the honesty of fresh ears. And unlike AI, I master with your intentions in mind, not merely to process the mix and boost the levels. If you want an experienced live engineer to master your music as only a human can, find me at soundporter.com.
Although sometimes like a classic thing to discover when we start mixing in the super chorus or in the chorus is we go back to the verse and it's like, oh man, those effects are way over the top, right?
Yeah.
So that can be like a first thing you got to do is like pull the effects way down.
Dial back, yeah, for sure. For sure.
What other stuff gets dialed back to make more sense in the verse?
A lot of things, what I do is volume automation on the master. So, I'll boost the chorus up 1 dB. Like I'll have my mix. This is something I usually do towards the end, but I'll have my mix like done basically. And then I'll turn the master fader down a dB, 1 dB, and then boost the chorus up 1 dB. So that way the chorus is still hitting the limiters or whatever, compression I have in the master bus the same way, but it's just the verse comes down a little bit. And another thing I'll do sometimes is the BrainWorks V3 plugin has, you can do it with any, width plugin, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just turning the width up 10, like plus 10 on the choruses just to make, so then it just not only gets a little bit louder, it gets a little bit wider as well.
Yeah.
And just, makes it feel bigger. Plus it's already getting bigger because it's usually the chorus, right? So those are like 2 tricks I use a lot for building and trying to make things sound bigger. And then a lot of effects automation, like maybe just I don't have a hall on during the verse and then the hall comes on during the chorus, or just riding some of the effects up during the chorus just to make it, pop a bit more.
Now, when you're imagining this, do you think you're thinking more of the hip hop mixes or more of the band live rock mixes, or just doesn't matter, same across different genres?
For the reverb might be more live stuff, but definitely doing spreading out and levels, even more so in the hip hop stuff, because a lot of times the hip hop and pop music is a little less dynamic than you might have with a live band, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so having to create dynamics is a big deal to make a hip hop record kind of cut through more. So definitely doing a lot of volume changes for a hip hop record to make it just stand out more when the chorus comes in.
Right on. Okay, so let's keep talking about the console one, because it's something that I've seen and watched a couple of videos and play with it for a second, but not really used it. It's broken out where you've got some sections. There's sort of like section over to the left, section in the middle, section over to the right. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And then there's a row of buttons on the top, isn't there?
Yeah. So, well, basically it's like if you've seen the other console ones they've had, it starts on your left, you have low cut, high cut, then your shape section, which is transient designers and gates and stuff. Then the EQ section. And what's really cool about this newer version is there's 2 EQs and 2 compressors. So you can have a clean EQ and then a vibe EQ, and you just press the button and it switches to either or EQ, right? Same with the compressor. You could have, like the 1176 and the LA2A trick. you could do that and just hit the button and it switches back and forth from 2 compressors. So the way it's set up, you can basically have 4 EQs in the chain. 2 EQs and 2 compressors in the chain, which, makes it pretty much useful for anything. And then it has, a tape emulation thing built into it, and then drive and all this other stuff that it really can be the only plugin you need to get a mix. And you can switch out, UAD plugins in there. And I'm pretty sure from what the guys have been telling me over there that they're going to find a way to, you'll be able to program other plugins with the Console One. So even plugins that aren't part of their ecosystem.
You mean like put in a plugin and then map it out how you want kind of thing?
Exactly. I feel like that's coming pretty soon.
Yeah, that seems like a common theme that we're starting to see across some of these controllers.
Yeah.
All right, so when I was messing with the Console One, which was years ago, I think when it was first introduced, I didn't quite understand it yet. Those rows of buttons, I guess you have to select, those are tracks?
Yeah, so the rows of buttons at the top are actually all the different tracks you have. And what's cool about the new version is it has like 3 LEDs above the buttons, each button. And so it shows you like what's actually active and like the levels of it going, right? Also, they're all color coded to whatever color you have the track in your session.
Oh, right. That's hip.
Right. So if all your drums are yellow, you'll see like a row of yellow lights. Then you'll know those section is your drums. So it makes it quite a bit easier to get around on, as opposed to like the older version, which was just a button and you didn't know what was what, right?
Yeah, that's what I remember thinking about it.
It was kind of useless
know what
in a
button
way.
to push.
Yeah, exactly. So this
then like dancing, so you have now some lights that represent the meters or something. Is that the deal?
Yeah, the 3 lights kind of representing meters, or that there's something active on that track, and it's color coded to the colors you use in their session, which is huge for me. Like yellow is always drums in my session. I think all of us have some sort of color for their instruments, and so that makes it a lot easier to press and be like, oh, there I am.
How did you arrive at your colors? Because sometimes I like to ask this on here. It's like there's obviously not one right answer, although we could joke as if there is. But I think the answer is like everybody can come up with their own color scheme. But then I hate choosing colors when it's time to paint the house. I'm just like, oh God, no.
I honestly have no idea. I really don't. Maybe like
just started a while ago.
The only thing I could think of is like I used to watch like Dave Pensado's videos were the first ones out, and maybe I learned color coding from there, but I don't know. I'm sure like
drop a comment in and let us know what the very best color scheme is for mixing.
Oh, that's
a
tough one.
This.
A friend of mine,
if there's a place to drop a comment in, of course it's a podcast and you're driving, so don't do it right now.
I have a friend that we co-mix a lot, right? And he's got different colors than I do. And it's like...
Is this Anthony who you're saying you're
Anthony,
working with?
yeah, my friend Anthony. He's a great mixer. Yeah. And it just drives me insane. Like I have to change my colors when I get the mix because like I just lose. I can't figure out what I'm doing,
And do you have any ninja tips for doing all the color coding? Didn't we go by SoundFlow booth as well and check out their stuff? Yeah,
SoundFlow I use. So I use SoundFlow for Pro Tools. And then in Studio One, for some reason or another, it's just easier for me to click the color because I pack all my stuff into folders anyway, and then you can just hit a button and it colors all those tracks within that folder.
Oh, that's cool. I wonder if Pro Tools would do that. I haven't tried that yet.
Probably not.
Pre-coloring the tracks. Probably not. Probably a week later.
Yeah. So with Pro Tools, you can use SoundFlow, and it does it really well.
Yeah.
So,
although I think that was a Chris Shaw, or maybe that was Andrew Sheps who came up with the macro that'll do that in SoundFlow.
Well, he's got his color plugin with SoundFlow, which I never really understood the use of, but you can program it to be whatever color you want pretty easily.
Yeah. All right, cool.
Yeah.
So with Console One now, you've got the tracks. You can kind of tell from the color coding. I know that Avid S1 makes their controller, and those also do a color coding. But I do remember that the colors on the LEDs are usually kind of a little bit limited compared to the variety that are going to be on the actual session, you know?
Yeah, it's close. I mean, the console one's pretty dang close. I mean, it's a little off, but you know what it is. You know what I mean? It's not like, oh, that's orange when it should be yellow. You know, it's like, it's pretty close.
Well, that's cool. So do you find yourself when you're mixing now, do you just like reach up and hit a button up there? And how would you know if it was the kick or the snare, for example?
Well, that's the funny thing is with all that being said, I still don't use the buttons.
Really? Okay. All right. There you go. This is where we're just getting into the reality here. You know, there's sometimes also rock stars, I would say sometimes these buttons and features go onto the hardware and they might not be your absolute go-to till, you know, a couple of years in with an update too. So
yeah, I mean, I think if you used Console One software as like, that's what I'm mixing on is their thing, right? Then I would probably get used to using those buttons quite a bit. But I'm always skipping around with a mouse, even with the Console One. And so a lot of times what it is me clicking on a track and then I can reach up and turn the knobs for whatever I'm trying to adjust on that track. And that's how the Console One works for me at least, you know? A lot of times it's just a low cut or a little bit of a compression or something, you know what I mean? Or a little top end or something like that you can just hit really quick just by grabbing the knob and turning it, and then you move on.
All right. So you were saying that you've got like filter section on the left. I think you had the EQ in the center and then dynamics on the right. Was that right? On the console.
And then you can also turn the volume and pan on there as well.
Okay, that's cool. Although I'm guessing if you have the UF-1, then that becomes your fader.
Yeah.
So then the way you might work is, do you sort of use the mouse to select a track you're going to work on?
Yeah, exactly. So the way it works is like my right hand's always on my mouse.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's given my left hand something to do though. So I can reach to the left, hit the fader, and then so the mouse is moving where it needs to go. It just makes things fast. That's why I said it feels the closest I've had to like a really good connection between mouse and hardware. And so I can click on the track and grab the fader while I'm clicking on the track, turn it down, and then move to the next thing. Just makes things really fast. Or I click on a track, I'm like, I just need to cut some low end on there. Boom, and I'm reaching and cutting the low end. So the hand still stays in the mouse. I'm still a mouse guy, but it just gives you access to other parameters that make it a lot quicker to move, you know?
Yeah. And then do you have to actually open the plugin window before you start turning knobs? Or does it do it in a way where you just select a track and then just start making adjustments, and like a console, you're confident that you're EQing the bass when you think you're EQing the bass?
Yeah, exactly. As soon as you click the track, you can hit whatever knob you want, and it's affecting that track. At least in Studio One. It doesn't work in Pro Tools like that.
That's good. We want to know this stuff. We want to know this stuff.
Any DAW but Pro Tools, it works fantastic in. Just like any controller.
We should probably preface this by saying the reason why that might be is the fault of Pro Tools, not the fault of the companies that are desperately trying to make controllers for us.
Yeah, 100%. Avid has their Yukon protocol because they have their hardware that they sell, and they only want you to really be able to use their hardware with their software. Which
is like the S1 and the S3 and the S6.
Yep, all that stuff.
Now, I have the S1s. I actually started with that, and I switched over to the UF-8s, which are the SSL controllers for fader packs. And so we'll talk about all that stuff too, I think, here. But the S1s, some elements of them were pretty cool, but they also broke for me a lot with Pro Tools. Like I'd go to mix, and then it just forgot my configuration, and I'd have to like reconfigure all the iPads and the S1s every time.
And Yukon,
of that. So I guess the takeaway is Rockstars, we're still not off the hook to do the hard work of being engineers when we open up our stuff and get to work, right?
Yeah, the Yukon protocol can be a little funny sometimes. That's the one that Avid uses, and when it works really well, but sometimes it does just not work. I haven't had any software issues really with Console One. It gets a little weird, and it's no fault of its own when I'm opening. A lot of times I have Studio One open, and then I have to open Logic because I'm exporting files, and I forget to close Studio One, and then it's like I don't know which program to be working with. So it's the user's fault, not Softube's fault.
Right. Now, if that was the UF8 from SSL, so that's another controller, Rockstars, the solid state logic UF8 is their 8 fader pack. That one you have layer buttons, so you would actually switch the button. So you could keep Logic and Pro Tools and Studio One open, and you just hit the button, and now you're mixing on those different.
Yeah,
ones,
that's what's pretty cool about the the SSL gear is you can just switch the layers, and the Softube's still fine when it does that. It's just like gives me an alert, basically, a little pop up saying, "Hey, like, what's going on here?" And you just hit OK, and you keep moving. So it's not a big hassle, but that's been the only issue, if any, I've had as far as software not working.
Okay, so when you're using it, do you find that you're mostly like looking down at your controller and just listening, or do you have to look up at the screen a lot?
I'm usually going to it for a certain thing I hear in my head that I want to change. So I'm not sure if a lot of times I just close the screen of the session I'm in. I don't know, for some reason I find that if I'm not looking at the program, I hear it differently, and I don't know why that is, but like just closing the program and like you just start hearing things different. I don't know what it is.
No, I think that makes lots of sense. I mean, visual affects our perception of things for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I have friends, there's a lot of engineers out here in LA that do this trick where they have it. So if they put their mouse all the way to the right, it shuts the screen off. And it's crazy when you turn the screen off, just because I think it's just all you got is your ears at that point, and it's super focused on that. And the visual thing's been taken away. So I think there's a really cool, speaking of ninja tips, is like turn the screen off and listen, and you just hear things, it's wild.
Now, I mean, obviously most things, if we're mixing with a mouse, you can't adjust it unless the screen's on.
Right.
But with something like one of these controllers, like Console One, you could already have it, as long as it's connected to the track you're working on, you could start dialing it in with just listening. That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, you totally could do that. And another thing I do with the Console One is I have a small iPad below my main screen, and that has the Console One software on it. So I can see, if I'm turning a knob, I can kind of see it on the plugin as well. And that helps me double check that I'm on the right parameter too.
All right, so let's talk about what the Console One software is. So is it a single plugin that looks like the layout of the controller and has all the stuff in it? And of course, Softube's been around for ages. They've been making and modeling great compressors and EQs and all kinds of stuff for a long time, right?
Yeah, so it's basically like it's a software that's external to the DAW you're using. But you put a plug-in on, I just put it on every channel on your DAW, and then it corresponds to the software and in the actual Console One. And so then you can load any Softube plugin on there, as well as any UAD plugin on there. And you can do it however you want. If you want to have a UAD EQ and a Softube compressor, you can do that. So there's a lot of different options you can use using the software.
Okay, cool. And then it's got a couple of little screens on it, so you can kind of see on the controller what you're working on as well?
Yeah, the new version has two little LCD screens on it. And that makes it like another, like you were saying, mixing without the screen. It makes it a lot easier to know what track you're on now, because the screen's there says, kick. So it's not a guessing game, whereas before the MK2 version, they didn't have any of that, and you had to make sure you were on the kick by looking at the screen. So it's another way to detach from mixing with a monitor,
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm just glancing at it on the website here. Oh, I see what the plugin looks like. It kind of looks like the channel strip in Pro Tools, doesn't it?
Yeah, kind of, yeah.
Yeah, so they don't necessarily try and dazzle you with, scrapes and vintage-looking panels for old Fairchilds. They just sort of give you the information you need. So that could be a hip way to work when you get used to that too.
Yep. And now, with the added benefit of 2 compressors and 2 EQs on each channel now, it's almost, it's awesome.
All right, so you can actually use both EQs and both compressors at the same time. You have to choose,
and then change the order of them too.
Right, so you can put the EQ later in the chain if you want to, or put the compressor earlier.
Yeah, you can move all the stuff around within the software.
All right, that's cool. That's cool. Well, what else do you want to say about that controller? I mean, are there stuff about it that I haven't asked the right question about?
No, that's basically it. You also get sends on there too. So if you are in Studio One, you can actually hit the button and switch the sends.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, that's right. Because with the SSL, there's no. I don't want to say that wrong.
I think you can use the sends. I mean, in Pro Tools, you can with the S1.
Yeah. With the S1 and with the UF-8 from SSL, you can do sends, but you're controlling the Pro Tools sends. Are you saying that there's a send from the console plugin?
No, you're
just
controlling
the sends of Studio One.
Correct. Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, I think that's probably common to be able to access the sends.
Yeah.
Because I used to, what was the Command 8? That was my earliest one from Pro Tools.
Yeah. Was that the Mackie one, the Command 8?
I can't remember if it was actually made by Command. Mackie also made the Huey, which was just their
Huey,
controller.
that's what it was. Yeah,
that's where the whole Huey protocol comes from.
Right. The fact that that's still around is insane to me.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, having these controllers and getting it dialed in to where you can really work without thinking is so worth it if you get it working.
Right. Yeah. You just got to get it working.
And I would say from using enough of them and talking to enough people about them, the initial level of power that you get is just the simplicity of having some faders and some mutes.
Yeah.
And some solos. That's the first level of awesomeness. And then the next level is like the additional stuff like controlling plugins, if you use the special feature, or having extra layers, or having like programmable macro buttons, or even like transports. But the and I just want to add that sometimes it feels like, oh wait, just faders, mutes, and solos. Is that like a cop-out? And that was sort of my initial thinking. Like if we weren't using the super level of everything, then were we really taking advantage? But in my experience, just having those very basic things is a game changer and totally, totally worth it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I love having a fader. And I'm more of a single fader guy as opposed to like the 8 faders. I don't find I use all 8. I'm just always on one track.
Yeah.
But being able to grab that fader and just blend it into whatever I'm mixing is huge to me. Instead of like holding the mouse and clicking it up,
Yeah. Well, we'll check in with you next year after you've been mixing a lot of live band stuff and see if you still feel like one fader is your fave.
Yeah, I know. I'm sure I'll have more stuff. I'm a controller junkie, so I will not be surprised if you check in next year and I have a whole new setup.
Yeah, Rockstars. That's one thing about Matty's. He's lucky for us. He's often changing things out and making a really badass video to explain this new thing and how it works. So you've already done some videos about Softube console.
Yeah. I've done a couple of videos. I was lucky enough to be working with them, and they sent me the new console 1 when it dropped. So I was like one of the first people in the States to actually have one, which was kind of cool. And so I made a few videos for that when it came out.
Okay, cool. At Isotope, saturation just got a whole lot smarter. Introducing the new Isotope Plasma plugin to supercharge your sound by giving your tracks exactly what they need, precisely when and where they need it. Unlike traditional saturators that apply a static effect, Plasma's groundbreaking flux saturation technology analyzes your sound and applies dynamic processing, adding targeted warmth, depth, and character to bring out the best in your mixes and masters. Use the secret code ROCK10 to get 10% off the new Plasma or any of the awesome plugins at isotope.com. Atom Audio proudly announces the D3V active desktop monitors and H200 dynamic closed-back studio headphones, designed in Berlin for pro-level monitoring in home studios. The D3V features 3.5-inch woofers with ribbon tweeters for studio-quality sound in a compact design ideal for songwriters and producers. The D3V includes USB-C and balanced analog inputs, a headphone output, and DSP room acoustics. The H200 closed-back headphones feature powerful 32-ohm drivers and comfortable ear pads in a durable metal construction, making them perfect for studio or portable use. The included plug-in enhances tonal control and stereo spatialization, so you never have to leave the sweet spot at atomaudio.com. So once again, the Softube plug-in has lots of features in it that would be plenty to mix with, but you can also either now or very soon integrate third-party plugins and use your own plugin with it as well if you want to.
Yeah, like on their demo video when they released it, there was all these people caught it. It said like MIDI controller 1 on the list of plugins, and everyone was like, "Oh, that's what it is." And that's where the hint's been thrown out there.
Okay,
they kind of gave it away on their own.
All right, cool. Let's go to some of the other ones. Two other things I think we should talk about. I know you said you're using UF-1, so maybe you can't talk much about UF-8, but maybe we can, because a lot of the integration, I'm guessing, is the same. And then Rock Solid Audio is another one that we want to talk about.
That was awesome.
Which one do you want to start with? You want to talk about SSL or Rock Solid Audio?
Yeah, we could do it. Yeah, SSL.
All right, let's go to SSL and let's start breaking it down. Describe the UF-1 again for us, and then I can jump in on UF-8 and UC-1 unless you want to.
Yeah, well, I've used the UC-1 too. The UF-1, I think I start getting confused with all the names, but it's basically a transport with one fader, one solo, and one cut, and one pan. And then it has 4 more knobs, but 2 layers where you can program to whatever you want, which a lot of times I use those for like my reverbs and delays, which don't work with console 1. So I can just reach up and turn the mix or turn the high pass or low pass, whatever decay time on reverbs and delays, which is cool to have a knob for those. So that's basically how that works. The other thing, which I don't use, but it comes with a metering plugin that you can hook up to your DAW, and then it comes up on it's got a pretty big screen on it, and it comes up on a screen here. I use different metering software, so I don't use it, but it is available and part of what you get with it.
What do you mean metering plugin that you use with your DAW? So
yeah, I can't remember what the metering plugin's called. It's because I don't use it, but
how is it connected to the controller? Is there a meter also on the controller?
Yeah, basically the plugins, like the meters and the phase scope on the plugin show up on the screen on the controller.
I see. Okay. So if you had, if you use the SSL channel strip with the UF-1, the input and output, LED meters would show up on the UF-1 as well? Yes. Well, I don't know. I think I might be getting confused. It's basically just the metering stuff. Like you put it on your mix bus, your final mix bus, and like your phase scope, and like I think they do RMS. Oh, right. That's part of the SSL. Hold on, I'm going to get the
complete thing or whatever.
Yeah, complete bundle or whatever. That comes a subscription, I think, right?
Right, but that comes with the UF-1. Just that one plugin. Kind of like the UC one, the UC one's the controller, right, with the EQ and the bus compressor.
UC1 is the EQ. It's basically the whole channel strip controller.
Yeah, so like that one comes with
it mirrors the SSL channel strip too perfectly.
Right. And so that comes with like the EQ plugin because that's what that does. It's the same same kind of thing.
But it also comes with the stereo bus compressor because that's built into the center of the UC1.
Right.
So you've got like the meter
which
for the compression there. You don't like the compressor itself, you mean?
No, I love the compressor. I hate that they put it onto this big box.
I didn't mind it because I like seeing if I'm over compressing the mix when it happens.
No, 100%.
But although I will say that experience, knowing what I'm doing, I'm less worried about that because I can always go check it when I want to.
Yeah.
Mixing fast in traditional fashion, I found, like, especially because I took the SSL console and I took the SSL style compressor as our mix bus compressor to my Bonnaroo studio for many years, for 15 years.
Yeah.
And so those mixes happen so quickly that you could easily slam your compression before you realized it,
Right.
And so it was nice to be able to see that was happening.
That was my problem with the UC one, is just like, I don't always use a SSL compressor. And so to me, it was just this huge, like, amount of space on my desk.
Estate,
Yeah. And I'm just like, this thing is, that's one of the main reasons I didn't like that controller.
Now, I don't remember if the new third-party feature, so we can talk about that now.
Yeah.
SSL is, by the time this episode is out, it will be live. It's the ability to use any other plugin with the UC1, and you can just map the controllers and knobs to it. But I don't know if they're going to include that center compression section, because then it would be cool. Like if you could,
that's true.
Use whatever your stereo bus compression was, or your compressors on various mix buses like drum bus, guitars, whatever.
Then it could become useful. Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know if if that was a separate thing that you could program too. I guess we'll have to find out.
We'll find out. Keep an eye out for that, Rockstars. I use the UC1 a ton. I absolutely love it because I love being able to just reach down and turn knobs, and automatically I'm not looking at the screen and I'm looking down at what I'm doing. And I've also found, for me, I mean, I'm wearing reading glasses right now as I'm doing this interview with you. Let me put it this way. When I started doing these podcast interviews, when I started the podcast, I don't think I had to wear reading glasses to do podcast interviews. And now, a decade later, I have to. So it's a different experience for me. And I've learned that having to look up at the screen and then look down at the controller and then back up at the screen, or even like looking down at the keyboard to like move my hand over and do a multi-button thing, makes me a little bit dizzy.
Yeah. I mean, I'm starting to run into those problems. I have to do the tilt your head back thing to read lately.
Yeah. And
small print.
And so like now I'm starting to realize I'm back to feeling very, very motivated to program my macros really carefully and set up my controllers really carefully so that I don't have to move my hands. I remember the first time I learned about doing stuff like, long before we had controllers, Rockstars, long before we had SoundFlow, we used stuff like Keyboard Maestro or iKey 2. That was the first one I got into.
Yeah.
And I was programming macros only for speed. Like I was like, I have to move my hand, so therefore I can do this a whole lot faster another way. Now, as I'm older, I'm like, speed, speed's good, but I'm programming this for comfort,
For sight.
So, for sight. So I can keep myself, my head in the game and not be distracted by the feeling, feeling disoriented.
I love it.
So I think that's relevant,
Yeah.
So are you using any of the SSL channel strip stuff plugins, or I guess now with Console 1, that's your channel strip?
Yeah, I mean, I mostly use their stuff. They got a great they have like a certified SSL 4000 and a 9000. They got a Neve, they got the Summit Audio stuff, so they got tons of things. And then you can also use all the SSL, all the UAD versions of the stuff as well if you want. So,
and what's the footprint like in your mixing space? Does it, like the UC1 kind of goes as a centerpiece for me, and then I put the UF8s on either side of it.
Yeah, so my keyboard, my actual computer keyboard's right in front of me. And then above that is the Console 1, which is very reachable. And then to my left is the UF-1. Okay. And then to the right is my mouse and SoundFlow.
Do you use a physical mouse or do you use a trackball?
I use a physical mouse. I use the Logitech MX Master 3.
Wired or just like a little wireless guy?
Wireless, yeah.
Yeah.
And this is a great mouse because it's got a couple extra buttons, which I have programmed with SoundFlow to do like certain things.
What do you find are some useful things to program your extra buttons for?
I have one button closes the window. So I can open a plugin and then I click the button and it closes the window of the plugin.
Right. And the reason why that is useful is then you don't have to like go hunting for that little round.
Yeah, the little X
circle.
Or circle, yeah.
Exit out.
Yeah.
Yeah, stuff like that's so critical. Those dumb little things like having to just go to take your mouse and go to one point on the screen to click on it.
Yeah, no, it's just ridiculous.
Are game changers, to not have to do that.
No, I mean, that one macro probably saves me like 10 minutes a day.
It's one of the reasons why I struggle with both Logic and Studio One is I'm used in Pro Tools. I never have to go to the ruler to drop the play bar and press play. I just click wherever and press play. I guess it has to be the edit line, the straight up and down line when I click. And I think I finally learned that in Studio One and Logic, as long as you have that crosshairs, you can kind of do the same thing.
And there actually is options in Studio One and Logic to make it so you can click, just like in Pro Tools, anywhere and start playing from there.
Right.
Because that used to drive me crazy too. I know exactly what you're talking about. And I finally found, I know for sure in Studio One, and I think I just found Logic the other day actually, where I can just click anywhere on the edit and it will start playing from there.
All right, cool. Rockstars, reminder, we'll have follow-up in the show notes, links if you want to like reach out to Matt. If you got questions about any of the stuff we talk about and you need answers, I'm guessing Matty might be glad to hear from you.
Of course.
Yeah. And then, of course, do check out his YouTube channel, too, for more instructional videos on all this stuff. All right. So let's see. What should we jump to next? So the UF-1, did we forget to mention anything else cool about that?
No, I think we covered that one.
So essentially, you just click on the track you want to work on, or you hit the button on the Softube console, and that UF-1 follows it. Yeah. And that's your fader. And that's one of the things I will say that when you're in Pro Tools with Huey,
does not do that.
Well, I take that. I'm gonna disagree with you. I think if you click on the track name, I found that because I used to have the PreSonus one fader, and it would immediately jump to that.
But don't you have like shift click or something crazy in order to get?
I don't remember that. I remember it being pretty easy.
Because the Pro Tools only does 8 banks. It's like, because it's Huey, it's just the 8 banks or whatever, and so you have to bank over. I don't know.
Well, it's definitely for the 8-channel versions, you might run into that a little bit more.
Yeah.
So
let's needs to stop being lazy and let other software companies do this stuff.
Well, I do know enough about Pro Tools to know that they're not lazy.
They're not lazy.
Their butt on stuff.
I don't mean to be lazy. I say be more open. That's what I should say.
Yeah. I think they've just got so many things they're trying to solve all the time.
No, I get
really
it.
Hard to get work on them all at once. But so let's talk about the other SSL controllers. So the UF-8, it's the 8-channel fader. You had that for a minute too, didn't you?
Never had that one. That's It's one of the few controllers that hasn't made its way through here.
All right. Well, I could talk about it a little bit. It's not right in front of me. It's down in the studio. I'm in the podcast studio right now, Rockstars, aka Pod Damn It. Podzilla. And actually, I don't know where the page went. This must be it here. Nope, that's the 360 link, and that's UC1. Well, anyway, you've got 8 faders. There's a mute button. There's a solo button. Right next to each fader, there's a select button. You got soft keys at the top of it that you can click on, that you can program for special commands and macros and things. You've got sort of like V or hot keys over on the top right that you can program for things. There's a rotary knob on it too, which is really handy. You can have it scrolling your session right to left. You can put it in focus mode, and that rotary button where you can put your mouse over something and use the rotary knob, and it'll, turn a knob up or down on something. So that can be really handy. And then you can put it into record mode, so you can arm tracks on it. And you can also put it into automation mode where it'll like automate tracks to write automation moves on tracks where you just hit the select button and you go into write mode, stuff like that. I use some of the features a lot, like the fader and the mute and the solo, and the more ninja buttons I use a little.
Yeah.
And then I've programmed some macro keys a couple of times, but then I think I already deleted them and haven't reprogrammed them yet. So that's usually a good sign. If you really need it, you're going to put it back in when you upgrade and stuff.
Right. Yeah.
And
yeah.
then,
I mean, it's just a matter of using the different things that really work with you and stick, right?
Yeah. And then the thing about the macro buttons, they can be really handy if that's the only thing you got and you're going to use it. But once you get into Stream Deck and SoundFlow,
right?
Then, to me, my brain's going to think this is SoundFlow's job to do this like multi-step thing or this special key command. Because then you can do clever stuff like name the button and give it a little image and a look, something cool.
Yeah. And the cool thing with SoundFlow is you can do a keyboard shortcut command and then program that on the SSL stuff, because you can do keyboard shortcuts on the SSL stuff and then have it trigger a SoundFlow command. So you can get them all to work together as well.
I see what you're saying. Oh, that's clever. Yeah. So the UF-8 can be the button that is making that SoundFlow do the thing.
Right.
Oh, that's really hip. Yeah, I haven't tried that yet.
And actually the Pro Tools controllers, the S1 and all those, they actually you can use SoundFlow with those now. So you can have the buttons do a bunch of SoundFlow stuff, which is kind of cool as well.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Elevate your music production with the updated Complete 15 bundle from Native Instruments, featuring the new Contact 8. This comprehensive collection includes a fantastic range of versatile synths, sampled instruments, and innovative studio effects, giving you everything you need to bring your creative vision to life. Whether you're composing emotional scores, crafting deep dance floor grooves, or experimenting with unique sound design, Complete 15 has got you covered. Discover powerful plugins and instruments that guide you from the initial idea to the final mix. The included Contact 8 introduces exciting new tools like chords and phrases for instant inspiration, the Leap tool for dynamic looping, and Conflux, a cutting-edge hybrid instrument that merges organic and synth sounds in real time. Plus, enjoy revamped versions of Massive X and Guitar Rig 7 Pro to take your sound even further. Then, polish off your mixes with the AI-enhanced Isotope Ozone 11, included in the Complete 15 bundle. Use the code ROCK10 for 10% off at nativeinstruments.com. Empirical Labs, creators of the iconic Distressor, offer high-performance gear for audio professionals. The Fatso, or Full Analog Tape Simulator and Optimizer, brings the warmth of vintage tape and tube electronics to your digital recordings. Perfect for mixes, masters, or overdubs by adding harmonic generation, high-frequency saturation, tape emulation, and compression. The impressive new Pump, a 500 series classic knee compressor, shares its DNA with the analog Distressor and Arouser plugin. It features 8 selectable compression ratios, precise attack and release controls, saturation, a high-pass filter, and a first-time ever attack mod for added transient control, which is ideal for adding more snap to your snare drum. All Empirical Labs products are hand-assembled and tested right down to the circuit boards in northern New Jersey, USA, for durability and performance designed to last and be easily updated. Go to empiricallabs.com to find the Arouser and Big Freak plugins, where you can use the coupon code RSR10 for 10% off. Remember to follow at Empirical Labs on Instagram, making studio gear that works a little easier, a little better, and a lot longer. Hey, Rockstars, we're back now for the jam session, aka the second half of the show. My guest today is Matty Harris, joining us from his studio in LA. And he was maybe doing a little mixing and mastering of somebody's song right there in the break. This is how serious we are about our work. How you doing, Matty? You ready to jam?
I'm ready to jam, baby.
All right, good deal, dude. So lots to say about controllers. Let's talk. Let's go through this fast. But tell us about Rock Solid Audio and what's that one all about? And is that something you use as well?
Yeah, that's one. That's the one I kind of miss sometimes. I have no more room on my desk, but that's another great one if you don't. And it's way cheaper than the Softube one. If you're looking for a really simple SSL controller, that thing can work super, super good. And if I was like, I know you're going to disagree with me on this, but if it was like the Rock Solid versus the SSL EQ, I would do the Rock Solid because it's smaller and it just doesn't have the bus compressor on it. But
no, that's funny, yeah.
Yeah. But that one can work in mouse mode in Pro Tools, or it also has like a plugin where it will work, and so it doesn't have to work with a mouse. It's like a wrapper that you can put any plugin in and use it without mouse mode, which, some people like wrappers, some people hate wrappers, but there's a couple different ways to use that one as well.
Well, the wrapper is the same thing for the Console 1 or the SSL.
Exactly, yeah. So, I mean...
So to describe what that is, Rockstars, a wrapper means if you... it doesn't mean somebody who's singing raps over your song. What it means is if you're going to use the Rock Solid Audio one, you would open up the Rock Solid Audio plugin and you would have preloaded your other favorite plugins into that. Right. And then you can grab the knob on the Rock Solid Audio controller and it will control the knob on the plugin. Same thing with the SSL when they add the third-party plugins. I assume it's similar or same to Console 1.
I think so, yeah. What's cool about the Rock Solid one is when you turn the knob, a little pop-up comes up in your top right screen saying what you're doing, which is a cool little feature that...
Right. So like instead of... I thought that was really clever, actually. So instead of counting on the entire plugin to pop up in front of you and eat up the whole screen real estate, Rock Solid Audio kind of figured out a clever way to have just the one control pop up as an indicator. So like if you're only adjusting the high frequency, then you kind of want to know that you're on the bass track that you meant to be on.
Yeah,
although
exactly.
Maybe you're not. Maybe if you're adjusting the highs on your bass track, you're already in trouble. I don't know. But,
yeah.
But like, in other words, like you want to know that you're adjusting the right track and that you're adjusting the right element of the sound. And do you find that little window to be easy to interpret, or do you?
Yeah.
Have to like squint at it to read that it's what it's turning and adjusting?
No, I could tell what it is. Yeah, it's pretty good. I haven't used it that much because when I was using the Rock Solid, I was mainly in Pro Tools, whereas now I'm kind of moved back to Studio One. It's like I migrate like with the winter and the fall.
Okay.
To Pro Tools to Studio One.
Yeah. So then the other thing that Rock Solid will do is if you have a few plugins on your track, but you want it to control all of them, again, that little window pops up and then there's like little bars on it where you can click on one or the other to know which plugin you're going to be adjusting, right?
Right. Yeah. Which is
also another kind of hip way to do that.
Yeah.
So very, 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 I would say for some reason, now that we're saying it out loud, I already knew that the controller was nice and compact, but it seems like that's their whole approach to everything. Cause like even the screen real estate for the plugin is nice and compact.
Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah, for sure.
And the price is compact.
Yeah. The price is awesome. I mean, if you need a controller and you don't have a ton of money, that's the best one to get. 100%.
Yeah. And then, they, the software is called RA Control, I think. And that's the one that lets you sort of, I guess, Rock Solid Audio, RA Control. Yeah. And that lets you sort of load in a plugin and then guide this knob should control that knob.
Yeah, you program it. You can program your whatever plugin you want to the knobs, and you only have to do that once. It's not like you have to do it every single time. You program it to the knobs, and then you're good to go.
And they have two different controllers, too. They have the Micro 4K, which looks like an SSL channel strip. So it's got the similar color scheme and everything is sort of where you expect it would be. Although on the SSL, the dynamic and EQ is flip-flopped than it is on this one. So I don't know if that's normal or not. And then they have one called Micro 3, which is laid out a little bit differently, a little bit more generically, which is maybe cool because then maybe your brain just gets used to what you've assigned things to.
Yeah. And it's got, I think, 6 bands of EQ compared to,
oh, yeah, okay.
I think the 4. I got to look at it again. But.
Right. So that might be handy for a fab filter, like one of those graphic EQs or something too.
Yeah.
Although it'll be fun when somebody actually comes along with like the perfect graphic EQ controller. You know?
Yeah. They have the MP MIDI one that you can, it's a touch screen for your EQ.
Yeah. I remember when that was coming along, it was kind of exciting. But when I saw how it worked, I was just like, I don't know if I can wrap my brain around.
Yeah,
maybe it is easy to use.
I had that over here for a while too to try to do some content with, and it's a really cool unit, but I couldn't. I don't know. It just didn't. It started getting a little wonky on me, and
I think it was so Rockstars. That one actually is a screen with knobs around the outside of the screen, and so the screen shows the plugin. So you're looking at the plugin you're adjusting. But the knobs are off to the side, controlling the knobs on the plugin. So then you have to like figure out with your brain, okay, this knob goes to that part of the plugin. And I think like the ultimate is going to be the one that like just feels like you're grabbing the knob on the 1176. But I mean, let's be honest, Matty, even with outboard hardware, we were grabbing the wrong knobs and fucking shit up all the time, you know? Like it was
and like 5 more years, we're all going to have like the Apple Vision Pro on.
Yeah.
And we'll be sitting in a virtual studio with a 96 channel console in front of us mixing. We'll be sick.
And you think we'll, and let's keep talking about that. So what do you think that will look or feel like? And do you actually have conversations with people where you feel like you've got an accurate insight into what it might be?
I don't know. I mean, I think it will be cool. Like I went and did the demo of the Vision Pro.
Mm-hmm.
It's freaking amazing. Like you really can transform into other worlds. So I think that could be interesting to be, mixing on top of Mount Everest, and
well, it might be. I mean, it might be inspiring to like have
that's what I'm saying. Like,
or something.
I mean, you really feel like you're in a different world. It was pretty creepy.
Well, you know what's wild about that is traditionally there's a reason why we have bald spots as engineers. It's because the people have always been staring a hole in the back of our head from the back of the control room all those years. But once you go into virtual reality, they'll be literally like looking you in the eyes. So they'll be scowling from across the console right at you the whole time.
Right. Yeah.
All right. So this is the way I would envision it is like you put on the virtual goggles and you can... Well, there's Apple Vision Pros, right? Those are like the new ones that are coming out, but they're pricey too. They're like thousands of dollars.
They're like
right?
$4,000.
Yeah, but they'll come down. So you would put those on, you'd see whatever you wanted to see, and they actually apparently do a really good job of recognizing your hands and finger movements and stuff, right? So you'd be able to grab a virtual knob and it would theoretically maybe know and not mess up interpreting that you were doing that.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that actually being a thing someday,
I think that'd be awesome. What about the tactile feedback, though? Do you think that we'll have to like wear silly gloves on our hands, mixing gloves?
I don't know. So the Vision Pro one actually has a keyboard, like a typing keyboard.
Oh, okay.
And you have to peck at it in order to really get it to work.
I'm not going to do that. I'm out.
No, I mean, it's version 1.
Yeah.
But it almost felt like I was hitting it when I would peck at it, which was weird.
Oh, virtual keyboard. I see what you're saying.
Yeah. And you can also use a regular Apple keyboard with the Vision Pro and throw your screen up on your Pro Tools screen up on a movie theater size now, which is kind of cool.
Well, I'd love to see a thing where like maybe there's a generic controller and then the Vision superimposes itself on the controller so that, whatever the knobs and faders and buttons are assigned, it just says it, right there.
Yeah. No, that could be a thing. I mean, it tracks with eye, like your, which is weird to get used to. Your eye becomes the mouse. So it could be like you look at the fader, like you have one fader, actual physical fader in front of you. You look at the fader you want to change and you can use the physical one to change that one on your virtual 96 channel SSL.
I'll take it a step further. I think it would be super cool, and it'd be like the ultimate effort of like conservation and recycling and, good things for the environment or whatever would be to stop having to throw away all the old studio gear. Imagine like an old studio and like none of the gear's even on.
Yeah.
But like your glasses recognize the whole console in front of you, and it just maps out all the EQ knobs and the faders.
Oh, it'd be awesome.
Virtually, and then you can just sit there and mix on the real stuff again.
That'd be
Might
cool.
be kind of fun, right?
Yeah, that'd be great.
And then you'd be like, damn, this fader's dirty again. It's sticking. Just like the olden days. All right, so one more question, and then we're going to go on to some other things. Have you had any chance to really mess around with the SSL 360 software yet?
No, not really, no.
All right. I
know it's there, but...
Yeah, I'm still... the SSL stuff, Rockstars, the UC1, the UF-8, they really... As physical controllers, they make, other than the fact that they have a compressor in the middle that Matty hates, they really make a beautiful layout for
they do.
a mixing surface. And the challenge is if I'm in Pro Tools doesn't allow it to talk very fluently to Pro Tools, but it talks very fluently to the SSL 360 app. And it actually also talks very fluently to apps like Studio One, maybe Logic, I think, as well.
I think it works pretty well in Logic, too.
I think UAD, Luna, I think also talks to it really well. And I guess maybe other stuff like Ableton Live. Am I leaving anybody out and I just forgot? Cubase probably, right?
Yeah.
So any of those other ones, those more modern, well, not modern, I shouldn't say modern, but the more recent, the more recent DAWs.
You could say modern.
Okay. Well, they tend to be a little more like they entered the arena of we're creating a DAW and we're going to be friendly to everybody because we want everybody to work with us.
Exactly.
Pro Tools has been around for a long time. Yeah. So they're more like our grumpy old dog in the studio floor.
They are kind of like that.
Yeah.
Did you know that one of the most common fears with audio mastering is not knowing if your mix is ready or not? Look, nobody wants to send a mix in for mastering only to realize there's some resonating low end that's going on that wasn't picked up in the mix. That's where I come in. Hi, I'm Brian Murphy of Sound Porter Mastering. As soon as you send a mix for me to listen to, I'm already on your team. Mix feedback and master readiness is a service I offer for free and for good reason. That's because a great mix produces an even greater master. So if I can help you minimize oddities and issues and even provide some advice that will help your mix translate better, then mastering becomes more efficient and effective. And you don't stress about those issues at all. Just go to soundporter.com. There you can find videos, a FAQ, and a pre-mastering checklist on my website that will explain a lot of what you need to know. When you're ready for great feedback, just reach out via my low-friction contact form and send me a mix to hear. Again, you can find me at soundporter.com.
Are you sick of searching for the right cable only to realize it doesn't even exist? Or maybe you're asking yourself, how in the world do I hook my studio up? Well, say goodbye to those headaches because Trace Audio can get you wired up right. Based in Nashville but serving studios nationwide and around the world, Trace Audio specializes in custom cables, labels, and wiring solutions. From labeling your patch bay to wiring your full studio or large format console, Trace Audio does it all, whether you're a home or pro studio owner. And the real game changer is Trace Audio's custom patch bay label designer. It's a one-stop tool to color code, organize, and design labels for your 1/4-inch or XLR patch bays. No more wondering where things are on your patch bay, when instead you can have sleek, professional labels that are easy to read and easy to use. Try the free online patch bay label designer at traceaudio.com and use the code RSR15 to get 15% off your custom labels and take your studio to the next level. So what's my point? My point is when these things talk really well to the DAW, then it means you look down at your controllers and you just touch a fader and then the EQ knobs are automatically correct. They're on the fader you want and you just turn the knobs, you touch a different fader, grab the knobs, turn it, everything is sort of intuitive. And it's a really great experience when it's like that.
Yeah.
So that's kind of all I wanted to say about that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the other thing that you mentioned, which was that you've been doing hybrid mixing for quite a while, but you've started to get more excited about using the plugins rather than even having to use the outboard gear, or you just had comments about that stuff.
Yeah, no, I mean, just it feels like in the last year, there's been a couple plugins that have come out that I have a hard time distinguishing between, my hardware and the plugin version. One is the Louder Than Liftoff Silver Bullet MK2, which Plugin Alliance came out with, even though Silver Bullet guys, or Louder Than Liftoff guys did all the coding from what I've read. That thing just sounds awesome, and it's really really close to my hardware unit.
So what is it? Because I don't even think I've
so
used
the
it yet.
Silver Bullet's a really cool unit, and what it does, it has transformers from the Neve and API, and you can pick either one or both. And then it has different these little cards you can put in, SSL bus sound, or all kinds of different weird things, Verimu cards you can add. And then it has an EQ, and it's just it's like a master bus, mix bus processor, basically.
Okay, cool.
Does a bunch of different things, but they have a plugin now as well.
Yeah, it's like a white looking panel.
Yep.
Got a
That's
cool
it.
little robot dude playing a keyboard off to the side for some reason.
Yeah. Yeah. And so it's just to me, it's and they call it's Mojo. It's a Mojo box. It can add flavor, a Neve flavor, API flavor, whatever you're looking for. And it just sounds awesome. I'm a big fan of it.
Are you, so this is almost like modeling consoles, but you're tending to use this just on the, well, it really is more Mojo. Like you said, it's more like it's got vinyl saturation, VHS
the plugin
tape
does,
stuff.
Yeah, the tape, the plugin has all that. The box, that's the thing. The plugin does more than the hardware now.
Right.
Because they can,
Well, that happened with the Empirical Labs Arouser. Same thing. When Dave Durr put the distressor into the computer, he added the attack feature.
Right.
And then at NAMM, I saw he was showing off the pump, which is the 500 module, and he was like, we were able to take the digital attack feature and put it back into the hardware. So it's crazy. Doing a nice full circle.
Yeah, I mean, there's that, and then
well, so how do you use it? So what would tell us some use cases for the Silver Bullet?
I use it. I forget everything. Sometimes I'll use it on the mix bus, which is its intention, but a lot of times I'm using it on drums. Get that Neve sound, that API sound. You can push it a little more. It works well on basses sometimes. I've even used it on vocals when I have a really thin vocal. I'll run it through the Neve processor, and it can give it a little more thickness to it. So it's really good for just, adding some color to certain things that need it when it's needed. And I have friends who swear by it on their mix bus, that use it just on their mix bus all the time, the hardware unit.
So I'm looking at the knobs, and we have A, N, and C. And is A sort of like the API transformer, N is like the Neve transformer?
Correct.
And what's the C?
C is the Mojo one, and so there are these different cards you can put in. Mine is the SSL 4000 card, so it has that 4000 sound to it. They also
You're talking about the physical one.
Yeah. And they just came out with a 4000 one with a compressor built into it, so it's the whole chain, the bus circuits plus the compressor of the SSL 4000.
That's clever. So it's you might want one kind of processor circuit versus another, so you just swap out cards. Is it? Yeah. There's a synth I was learning about, this drone synth I was just watching a video on recently that does the same thing for the effects channel, and you had a little booklet of almost Atari or Nintendo game modules, and you just pull out a little card and slide it in. Is it like that, or is it more like you purchase a card and install it on the inside of the unit?
Yeah, it's a pretty heavy. I mean, it's not hard. It's probably, but you got to take the top off and take some screws out, and it's not like
it's not like swapping out your Atari 2600 game.
Exactly.
Switching from Pac-Man to Superman.
Yeah, so it's a bit more work. But, once you kind of find the card, like now they have some new cards came out. So is it Stam Audio or no, Audioscape, I think, made a new card for them. Actually, I saw this at NAMM. And it's like an LA2A compressor with the output of 1176, like this Frankenstein kind of a compressor. That's a card you can put into this thing.
That's cool.
So like, there's a bunch of things. And so I guess a lot of liftoff guys are like realizing them like you said, like, well, how many, like I want to use different cards. So I guess they're going to be coming out with a new box that you can put all your cards in. I don't know. That's like a whole nother rabbit hole to go down. But
well, that's such a cool concept too. The concept, I mean, it's like 500 modules. It's the kind of idea of plugins in the physical world. So you're like, you build gear, but you incentivize other designers to make additions to it, add-ons.
Yeah, and it's cool because like all their Mojo thing cards are like $350, which is not a little money, but it's a lot cheaper than buying a whole unit. You know what I mean? A whole hardware unit. So
okay, cool, awesome. Yeah. So that plugin looks cool. That's Plugin Alliance Rockstars. Check that out. And then there's also stuff like looks like there's some LF and HF. So it's like Baxandall, right? You can just boost some lows, boost some highs.
It's a Bax EQ. Actually, you're right.
And air knob, kind of like the Mog.
Yep.
So you can add some stuff. And then vintage, I don't know what aspect ratio is.
Vintage just switches the EQ mode to be more like a vintage Neve EQ, from what I understand.
And then it says Dynarealism. So I'm guessing that's kind of the tape emulator.
Yeah, you're looking at the plugin. I got to check the plugin out. I think that is actually...
And then body bass, sub 1 and sub 2. So it's probably low end resonance.
Yeah.
Or something like that in Sheen. Or maybe those go with the EQs. All right, cool. Well, that's cool. So that's a situation where you had this like magic Mojo box, but the plugin is so good that you don't feel like you're giving something up to go digital.
Not completely. No, I mean, there's slight differences, but like, and that's like the whole thing. Like another plugin that I just did a video on actually is this new Keve Audio Enfuse plugin. And that's the Neve. It's a mix between the Neve MBT and the SSL Fusion. So they took two like mix boxes and blended them together. And then you can pick and choose which one you want to use. So
say it again. It's a blend between
the Neve Master Bus Transformer, which is a pretty new unit from Neve, and the SSL Fusion hardware box.
Right. Yeah, right on.
Yeah, and they made it so that you can pick and choose which modules you want to use from each unit, which is kind of interesting. And so I did a video comparing the hardware to the software. And I think it sounds pretty dang close. Now, the funny thing to me sometimes, and I don't know how to take it, is a lot of times, especially on the comments on this one, as I just read them, people are like, no way, the hardware sounds 10 times better, and it's aliasing and all this stuff. And it's like, all right, man, let's put some blindfolds on and see like if you're really hearing this, or just maybe you bought the unit and are feeling some sort of way that, hey, a $80 plugin sounds as good as your $4,000 hardware unit. I don't know if it's that or not. Like there's differences for sure, but they're getting so close, and the people we're mixing for aren't engineers,
Right.
If this stuff gets you so close to like sounding like, I mean, if we're talking a 5% difference for one unit, like I just don't see like what's the point of spending that much money for something like that, Well,
it also begs the question. It's like when you're comping stuff, there's that moment where you're like, you've made a decision, but then you're like, but what if one of those other ones is a little bit better?
Right.
And then you keep looking, and you realize that there's a lot of power sometimes in being able to make the decision and move on, and versus what you might lose in the creative moment by continuing to hunt for yet one more take, and A/B comparing every single option that's out there. And I guess that I'm just trying to think if that really can apply to this same topic where it's like, this infinitesimal comparison of things versus the benefits that you get by being able to use stuff in the box. You get the recallability, you get the speed, you get the fact that maybe you can use more than one on a mix or a session too.
It's huge.
You get the ability to, I think it's just always, we have to remember that there are trade-offs for things, like when you're worried about losing some tiny little difference, you might be gaining a bigger step somewhere else.
Well, yeah, that's part of my point is that so a lot of times guys who have hardware units, they just leave it at a certain setting. So it always recalls to that and it's always the same thing. And it makes it so you don't have to do recall sheets and all that. But it's like, okay, so maybe if you changed that EQ on that box, it might have made the mix 10 times better. Whereas you have the software of it, I can in version 4, I can go and change the EQ and it doesn't matter because it saves with the session. I can turn it back or whatever, and it's like, to me, if we're talking about a 5% difference between the analog sounding quote unquote better than the plugin, but I can do all kinds of stuff with the plugin that I wouldn't probably do in my box because I don't have to want to recall it and do a new sheet or whatever it is, laziness, then the plugin's better in a way. You know what I mean? Because
and do you think there's a difference between thinking about this from a mixing perspective versus a mastering? Do you feel like mastering choice is narrow in terms of it's okay to have 3 pieces of gear when you're mastering at times, whereas mixing, you want to expand your color palette a little bit more?
Yeah. And then as far as mastering too, is I think you're 100% better in the box at this point. I think using analog and mastering is not a good idea anymore.
Okay.
Which I know is a very,
keep talking about that. We love controversy.
All right. So what I noticed some time ago was even just running a mix through my converters changes the sound. And in mastering, our job isn't to change the sound. It's to make it sound a little bit better or whatever. Right.
Right.
And so by staying in the box with mastering, we're using the cleanest EQs because they're digital. And the limiting is way better than anything you can do outside the box. And so I just think that masters almost sound better, unless you need a certain color, which a lot of people get mixing and mastering confused. And this part is that mastering is not usually the place where you're adding color to a mix. You'll really upset a lot of mixers by doing something like that. It's where you're, doing very fine tuning and maybe adding a bit of brightness or cleaning up a little bit of mud. And that's stuff you can do with a very clean EQ. And so that's why I say, I think mastering's done better in the box now. And a lot of people don't want to believe it, but guys at Sterling and all the top mastering houses are only using ozone now. That's it. And I'm not over exaggerating when I say that. They're all in the box. And so, and then, I think about a lot of mixers that I like Jason Joshua, who I know. Mm-hmm. And,
is that who we ran into at NAMM?
Yeah, we ran into Jay.
And then I'm like, hey man, how are you doing? What do you do? Do you do music? And you're like, dude, this guy's really famous.
That was awesome. No, but Jay and Chad Blake, who's a rock mixer. And I mean, the list goes on in Andrew Sheps.
Andrew Sheps, yeah.
These guys are all in the box now, man. 100%. And so I'm kind of coming to that part in my life where it's just so much. I think the mixes are better in the box because there's less problems that can happen. Problems can happen with analog. You know what I mean? You're always degrading something, or the cable goes out or whatever. There's so many problems that can happen. And nowadays with mixing, people are want so many revisions. They want so many, can you just change this, change that, change this? Because it's so easy, right? And so I've found that if you just stay in the box, it sounds great. And the revisions are so much easier. Oh, can you turn the hi-hat? Yeah, no problem, man. I'll hit it and hit offline bounce, and there's your mix. And then I made my client way happier in 5 minutes than me having to go recall my analog hardware. Mm-hmm. That's 30 minutes.
Your client may have ended up with something that is, multitudes better as a final result because they were able to make those recall decisions and get
100%,
the result they wanted, versus we can't really do it. You're going to have to run with it or whatever, of being stuck and limited.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's, it's trade-offs. Rockstars, of course, you should, of course, jump into the comments if we got them. Not if you're driving. And let us know your thoughts on this too.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Do you agree that the convenience and the power of digital means better results?
It definitely raises controversies, and you could go look at my YouTube comments from my latest videos, and you'll see it.
Awesome. Well, we're just glad you put yourself out there for helping us, hear those differences. I mean, if it wasn't for you doing these videos where you're like, in fact, one of the ones you talked about recently was, I think it was the top, 4 different mixing chains. And
of different
talking about getting beat up too.
Yeah, I got some good comments on that one too. I said Andrew's name wrong, and people would not let it go.
Well, the funny thing is the pronunciation. It's just where I grew up too. It's what we were drinking. So
yeah. I know. That was a big one.
Yeah. Atom Audio is proud to announce the new D3V active desktop monitor system and H200 dynamic closeback studio headphones designed in Berlin and perfect for pro-level monitoring in a home studio setting. The D3V is a fully active desktop monitoring system featuring 3.5-inch woofers and hand-folded ribbon tweeters for studio-quality sound in a compact form in elegant white or black finish. It's perfect for songwriters, producers, podcasters, and mixers with digital input over USB-C or balanced analog inputs, and includes a headphone output and DSP room acoustic switches. The H200 is Atom Audio's new closed-back studio headphone, featuring 40mm peak drivers and memory foam ear pads in a durable metal construction with a detachable main cable for dual-sided connectivity, making the H200s reliable for demanding studio use. With an impedance of just 32 ohms, they will sound great with your studio or laptop and include a plug-in for enhanced tonal control and stereo spatialization, so you never have to leave the sweet spot. To see the new D3V monitors and H200 headphones, go to atomaudio.com. iZotope is truly amazing for mixing and mastering your music, like the new iZotope Plasma plugin featuring flux saturation, which helps you sculpt the harmonics in your sound, enhancing the excitement and clarity of your tracks or mixes. And Ozone, with its built-in mastering assistant, helps you analyze your mix, suggesting all the settings you need for a professionally mastered result based on your chosen style of music, and EQ curve referencing a specific song if you want. Ozone features sophisticated yet simple modules like clarity, impact, low-end focus, stabilizer, imager, exciter, and spectral shaping, along with powerful dynamic EQ, compression, and limiting, allowing you to adjust the settings to your taste so it sounds incredible. And with the magic of master rebalance, you can even manipulate the vocal, bass, and drums separately at the mastering stage. Use the code ROCK10 to get 10% off Plasma Ozone RX or any of the fantastic plugins at iZotope.com. It's cool that you put in the time and effort to like try some different chains and then, compare them and let people hear it, because it's fun to be able to listen to those comparisons. Yeah. I spend a lot of time watching and listening to YouTube videos, and the ones that you create where we get a chance to hear how it sounds and stuff, I love that stuff. And there's a lot of times where I'm not in my studio in front of the speakers, but I do want to know what something sounds like. And it's like, it's a real convenience, and it's a real help to me to be able to pop on a video and be like, how does that thing sound? Oh yeah, that does sound pretty cool. Cool. Now I'll have that in my mind when I get onto the studio to try it out,
Right. Yeah.
All right. So let me see. What else do we want to say about that? There's some other videos. Oh, you also mentioned the Avalon 747.
Yeah. That one is a plugin now.
That's an outboard gear. That's been around for a minute, man.
Forever,
that goes back to the 90s.
Yeah, no, that thing, but I still have mine, but I've always loved the tube sound to it for mastering. Now that can be something that can actually, if you have a master, a mix that's a little sterile, that tube on the Avalon could always like give it a little bit of warmth, but not take it like smooth it out too much.
Well, you better break down the box for the Rockstars because they may not have used one. So what does it do?
Right. So the 747 it's a compressor. It's got a tube stage or a solid stage. You can switch back and forth. It's got a compressor, which is decent. It's not the greatest thing in the world. And then it has an EQ section, which, Avalon's kind of known for its top end. It's got this really nice top end to it, right? And so that's all I've ever really used that box for. And so the plug-in sounds just like the freaking box now. And it's like, so the box hasn't been on. That thing's like a heater on its own. It's the power supply and the tubes, that thing gets hot. So, I'm saving the electricity bill as well without firing that thing on.
So I got to just point out something. Since Rockstars, you're probably listening to this, something funny just happened. When Matty was pointing to the box, he'd sort of used his thumb, like thumbs up. And then Zoom just popped up this cartoon thumbs up on the video. I guess it was supposed to get my attention. Anyway, behind the scenes. Yeah. That Avalon 747, we had that. I remember when that showed up at Alex the Great, which was the studio I started out at with Robin Eaton and Brad Jones. And we were, Brad was, a lot of times he was cutting the bass on stuff. And whenever I did, we'd do it too. Just plug a bass right into the input of that guy. It was a great bass preamp too.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the Silver Bullet and the Avalon 747. Do those stand out for you because they simply are ones where you had the outboard gear and you stopped using it? Do you feel like there's lots of other examples that would fit the same description? Yeah,
I mean, I think, I think all of us have gotten used to using the software 1176s, right? You know what I mean? They sound like the real ones. It's not like, and so it's just more and more stuff. The plugins get better. They find better ways to code. And it's just, to me, we're at the point where it doesn't matter anymore. You know what I mean? Like, 95% of the records you're hearing on the radio now are all in the box. Now, one thing I do want to say is I only am talking about this on the back end. On the front end, I still think gear is super important for recording.
Right.
Great preamps, great mics, great stuff, always wins. So I do want to emphasize that I'm only talking about the back end. I think personally, and for me, and with mixing and mastering, you don't need gear anymore. You just need a computer and you'll be just fine. Yeah. But on the front end, gear is still super important.
Yeah, I totally agree. I've got a lot of the Spectra 1964 mic preamps in my studio. I love the way they sound. I've added on the Grace Design M201. That's killer to have like such an amazing sounding, very, very clean mic preamp. Clean, like as in like no added noise. I did a video where I showed off the Lewitt LCT 640 TS microphones, which are also very low noise, going into the Grace Design and just cranked it all the way up.
Wow.
I mean, it was so hot. I couldn't lean over to adjust my headphone level because it was feeding back. So I had to like stay perfectly still and then just make these teeny tiny sounds, and they sounded gigantic. But that, like you want to have that power of the outboard gear to make sure that what you're recording going in sounds great, especially if you're doing the live band stuff, right?
Yeah, 100%.
And then what about in that hip hop world? I mean, like the vocal chain was probably very critical, right?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, a lot of times the go-to hip hop chain is a C800 into a Neve 1073 into the TubeTech CL1B. Like that's what was like that's the LA starter kit.
That's
for
awesome.
recording vocals.
And none of those are new.
None of those are new. No, not at all. Not at all.
So the C800 is the Sony mic that looks like the Metropolis movie, and it's got like the heat fins coming off the back, right?
Yeah, it's got. I'm pretty sure
incredibly
two built into
crystal clear high top, right?
Yeah, sometimes too much, but it's a great sounding mic.
Yeah. And then Neve 1073 mellows that
Yep.
all out, makes it
Right.
more rock and roll.
Yeah.
And then the Tube Tech
CL1B.
CL1B, right? CL.
Yep.
I
And that's
can't
just to
even
catch your
write that fast,
peaks and stuff
CL1B.
on the way in.
Yeah, that's a wonderful sounding tube compressor that's been around for a long time. Really, it's kind of like an modern LA2A.
Yeah. That's
modern
good, yeah.
as in 90s.
Right. Yeah.
I think that's when it made an appearance, isn't it?
That sounds about right. Yeah.
Okay, cool. And then what about for rock vocal chain? Anything you think
I
of?
don't know. You should know more than that one than me.
I mean, 1073 is a great choice for that.
Yeah.
I
mean,
would,
it's almost the same. Made a U87 instead of Sony. I don't know.
Yeah, U87, or I would look into an Elam 251, and we did a lot of stuff with that, and I really loved it. And right now, the Roswell Pro Audio Aztec is a really excellent 251 option that I was listening to
cool.
at NAMM. Sounded great.
Go check that out.
And then what about compressors? Yeah, 1176. You don't need it. You don't necessarily need a tube one.
Yeah. 251s they use a lot out here too.
Yeah, and then the Spectra the C610 comp limiter is pretty great for that. Although it's different. It does things differently than 1176. It's not quite. It's just different.
Yeah.
You know? All right, cool. So then you had some other videos talking about plugins. You mentioned like top 10 Waves plugins.
Yeah.
And the ones that I wrote down that I thought were pretty hip was the Waves Rack plugin you were talking about.
The Studio Rack, yeah.
Yeah, Studio Rack. Tell us what that's
sweet.
all about.
So that's basically like we were talking about earlier, we're talking about wrappers. It's basically a wrapper. But what's cool about it is you can use all the Waves plugins in it, but you can also use any third-party plugin in it. So it's a great way to build, combination chains.
I'll point out one thing because I tried this. Unfortunately, you can't use a virtual instrument, I think. I think it's mixing plugins, not
that makes sense,
VSTIs.
Yeah. But built within it, you can, you can do parallels. You can actually create your own multi-band compressor with 3 different compressors from 3 different brands if you really wanted to. I've never done it, but it's an option if you need it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do all kinds of chains in there, especially because I work in 2 different DAWs a lot, Studio One and Pro Tools. And, we all have some, at least I do. I shouldn't say we all do, but I have quite a few chains that I kind of start with for certain instruments. And being able to just have it all in the Studio Rack, I can be in either DAW and just pull up the chain,
That's killer. That's actually one of the best reasons I've heard for something like that, which has not come up on the podcast before. I mean, I guess Slate Audio would be a version of that where like if you're inside their virtual rack, you might be able to pull it up.
Yeah.
But being able to basically be in whatever environment you want and pull up your custom sound, that's really hip. An example for me of a place I might want to use stuff like that. Places where I'm doing parallel compression. So a lot of times I'm doing multiple parallel stuff on the snare or on the kick in drums. So it might be hip to just put that on a single drum track and then have it do all the parallel stuff and spit one output.
Yeah. I do that. I do that myself. Like I have the Studio Rack on my drum bus, and then I have it split onto 2 different parallels for parallel compression, just like you're saying on the drum bus. So like that's a great way that I use it as well.
Yeah, and then bass. Craig Alvin hipped us to this kind of splitting the bass technique, which I love the way that sounds. But one of the challenges I have is a lot of times, especially when I'm in fast rough mix mode, which might even stick around for the final mix, because that's what happens to rough mixes sometimes.
Yeah.
I won't have enough time to set up, a multi-split routing and to be able to just pop a plug-in right on and already have it in there.
Yeah.
So that it gives me the
awesome.
sound.
There are all kinds of stuff like that. Yeah.
There was one other, I'll make one more comment about, because you're working in Studio One and yet we're using this wave things for the split thing. And somebody might go, well, Studio One already has that built in. You can already split plug-in paths inside Studio One. But you answered that question, which is using the Waves one gives you that portability to other DAWs. So you can just like design it. And if you change your mind and next week you're working on Pro Tools, you just keep working with it there.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, especially now where I'm mixing all kinds of different genres, like the mix chain, like the little drum bus chain I have for my hip hop stuff is different than the one I have for more live rock stuff, right?
Yeah.
So I can just hit a button and be like, oh, on this kind of song, you know, and switches right over.
Are you recording your own music or other people's music in your studio, but you're having trouble figuring out how to get your mixes to sound great? Do they sound weak or distant or lack punch or clarity? Well, I've got a gift to help you take your mixes from sounding like basement demos to sounding a lot more like professional mixes. And it's my free course called Mix Master Bundle. This course will show you how to get pro-sounding mixes from your home studio using free and stock plugins in Pro Tools. And the best part is that these mixing techniques will work for you in any DAW, whether you're in Logic, Cubase, PreSonus Studio One, Reaper, or anything you're using. Are you ready to make your best record ever? Then go to mixmasterbundle.com to get started for free now, and you can use the clickable link in the show notes of this episode. For 15 years, I owned a famous MCI console that came from Criteria Studio C in Miami, where it made many Grammy-winning records in the 1970s, and it sounded amazing. When I was ready to upgrade my studio to full digital mixing, I decided to team up with Rick Carson at Make Believe Studio, Metric Halo, and Golden Ear producer Bill Simzik to recreate the legendary MCI console as the new MBSI plugin. This isn't just another boring plugin. The MBSI captures that same iconic sound that was used on multi-million selling records like Hotel California for the Eagles, produced by Bill Simzik, Saturday Night Fever and Stayin' Alive for the Bee Gees, I Shot the Sheriff for Eric Clapton, We're an American Band for Grand Funk Railroad, and the soundtrack to Grease, and was loved by legendary producers like Tom Dowd, Todd Rundgren, and Bill Simzik, to name just a few. The MBSI plugin not only delivers the authentic sound of the original MCI console faithfully, but it also adds new features like a top-notch compressor, overdrive, and a high and low-pass filter switch. Features I always wished that the console had. Now you too can get that Grammy-winning MCI sound in your home studio, just like me. Whether you're recording or mixing, you can experience the sound of Miami 1976 with the MBSI plugin and soak up a little sunshine in your sound. Go to makebelievestudio.com/MBSI. Okay, cool. So then there was one last thing I want to ask you about the rack. Did it look like in your video like you were showing off some programmable macro buttons?
Yeah, so that's the other thing. It has 6 knobs on it, and you can program them to do whatever you want. You know,
like talk to your Rock Solid Audio controller or to your SSL UF-1 Rockstars?
Yeah, well, yeah. You could probably, you could get the macros. You could program the macros on your UC1. Man, that's getting heavy. Yeah. But the macros actually are to program the plugins you have in the studio rack. So each macro knob would go to multiple knobs inside different plugins? You could do whatever you want. You could have like one macro go to one knob, or one macro controls 3 knobs.
That's fascinating. Yeah. So I wonder if you could do I'm trying to think of like make up examples in my head, but you could have a macro like go extreme. Like I think about runaway delays. Sometimes you want to like go crazy on the runaway delay, but you have to back off the levels at the same time.
Yeah. Well, so like for instance, like 1176, I have a macro which turns the output down while the input's coming up.
There you go. It's like your built-in auto. It's the Matty auto gain.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I actually, not to plug the shameless plug, but I actually made a bunch of presets that are on my website now.
Oh, great.
For like artists who are just getting started and might not have a budget to pay for mixing, but want something that sounds better. They can buy, some of my Studio Rack presets.
Okay, great. We'll have Matty's
shameless plug.
Shameless plug. Definitely go check it out if you're curious about this stuff, Rockstars.
Yeah.
And so these presets would be, you'd want to have the same plugins that are supposed to load up inside there.
Yeah.
But you probably mentioned that on your website. You tell.
Yeah, it tells you.
Because
I got ones for Plugin Alliance, for Waves, for.
Oh, that's killer.
Different brands.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. So because if you get Plugin Alliance and you get the bundle,
right,
you're going to have everything. It's just a question of ease of use.
Yeah, it's a lot easier now because so many people are just doing subscriptions. Waves have a subscription now. Plugin Alliance, it's like.
Okay, very hip. All right, and then let's see the other two real quick. CLA Effects. That's one that I'm not using enough. The CLA Signature Series. What's cool about that one for you?
For me, I use that a lot of times if I just want something strange for, a lot of times this will be on an ad lib or some weird effectsy track, and you can get cool sounds with that thing really fast. Like it's got telephone, it's got distortion, it's got the big canyon reverb, it's got delays, it's got flangers, and
doesn't it have the throw switch on it too?
Yeah, so you can have a throw switch. So if you want it just to trigger at certain times, or you can leave it on the whole time. So it's just like quarter note delay blasting,
Right.
So yeah, it's a cool plugin for finding a quick sound,
Right. So if you need the Britney Spears, then you just like throw that on there.
Throw the telephone, you're good.
Okay, cool. Yeah, and I think that's a good reminder to us that sometimes we look at these effects things and we think about putting them on our lead vocal. We think about integrating them into this whole big mix picture, when sometimes we should just be thinking about like, just go freak something out for a moment here or a moment there in a song and let it really change things up. Don't even worry about the mix knob,
Yeah. Just have fun.
Okay, cool. Then CLA vocals, where Rockstars, you're going to be hearing that actually right now on my voice and on Matty's voice.
Oh, wow.
Because I've been using the shit out of that for the podcast mix template for years. That's
a controversial plugin. Speaking of controversial plugins.
Tell us more.
No, I mean, there was this whole thing. Well, this is more in the hip hop world, but I think Mike Dean, who produces Kanye and a bunch of other artists, said it was a terrible plugin. And Jason Joshua, who I've learned a lot of my mixing skills from, is a huge fan of that plugin. And so there's just been this whole controversy about a bunch of engineers. There's been YouTube videos about it, how it's a terrible plugin or it's the best plugin of all time.
That's great.
So,
I love it.
People can take it and leave it.
Well, and again, when I tried messing with those and thinking about them in terms of I'm putting it on my lead vocal, I'm trying to make that my subtle, the perfect mix thing, I would end up messing with it. And then I was like, nah, I just need to use, individual plugins and dial in a sound the way I'm hearing it. And I think that sometimes that was the wrong way to think about it. But when I was just like, okay, I need something that's going to work and make the vocals sound great for this podcast, it was like, once I figured that out, it's like a no-brainer, and it's makes it really consistent, which is great. I probably would be the same thing on vocals, on a lead vocal if I thought about it, or maybe it's just great for the backgrounds.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes just that plugin on default sounds awesome. I mean, if you take the effects off, you know what I mean? Just keep the sub and the high and the compressor, and I'll do that towards the end of my chain. I'll do Pro Q stuff and clean it up and make a little 1176 compressor or something. And then maybe towards the end of the chain, you just pop that on and it just gives you your vocal a little bit more. If you don't like it, you turn it back off. Turn it off. Exactly. Yeah.
But one reminder about those all-in-one plugins like that from Waves Rockstars is that they have an input fader and a little light that goes yellow to green or red. And so I think you want that light to stay in the green all the time. Is that right?
I like mine completely on stunt. I'm just kidding.
On stunt? Yeah, okay. No, but I mean, you need to pay attention to the input
I think they
level.
say yellow is actually the color you kind of want to, yellow-green.
Yeah, looking into there. And the reason is because these complex routings inside the plugin are intended to work in their sweet spot when the input level is coming in, right?
Mm-hmm.
So just a thing to remember. All right, so let me last topic. We don't have much time, almost none actually. So we'll make it quick, man. SonarWorks comes as a plugin that lets you put it in your DAW and it will like compensate for the EQ curve of your room, which is pretty hip.
Right.
And then IK Multimedia, is that right, Matty? That came out with a box
Arc.
where the plugin Arc is in the box. So it's like taken out of your computer now, right?
Right, which is what the Trinov's always done. The Trinov is a big computer that's separate, and then you run, it comes out of your DAW into the Trinov to your speakers, right? And so now IK Multimedia has come out with its own version, which is significantly cheaper than the Trinov. And, just like the Sonar works, it doesn't quite do all the stuff a Trinov does, but it's still a pretty cool thing. And I think for 99% of us is just perfect and makes it so you don't have to have it in your computer, which solves a bunch of issues. I mean, CPU issues, having to worry about if it's on when you mix, you print your mix. And it's just, you can run Spotify through it, you can run, your mix through it and hear what it's going to, your speakers fixed in the environment, So pretty cool stuff. I'm anticipating that SonarWorks would drop something like this.
Right. It makes sense.
At some point too,
That makes sense.
So
I think SonarWorks did a cool thing where they teamed up with Atom Audio, and the A7X speaker has some room correction options in it, and you can actually port over your SonarWorks profile directly into the speaker, which essentially does the same thing we were just talking about.
Exactly, that's true, yeah.
You
and
just
even my Lynx Aurora N interface now has that stuff as well, that I can port out if I use SonarWorks, the SonarWorks settings into the Lynx. So maybe that's their way of, making it work with the hardware.
So
too.
Anyway, Rockstars, there's definitely some options out there from, pricier ones down to more affordable. And the, Matty, the reason to tune your room like this is why should they do this for mixing?
Just because, if, what you hear is what it is. And most rooms, especially at home, the biggest issue is bass. The bass is going to be messed up. And these things can do a really good job at adjusting that from an EQ standpoint. Now, it might not be the best way to do things. Always work on the acoustics first, but it can definitely be a huge help in getting that last 10 to 15% of making your room sound good.
Yeah.
And I think it's one of the most important things after the speakers that you could do for a home studio.
So basically, if you're able to hear the bass more correctly when you're making mixed decisions, you're just making better decisions.
100%, yeah.
All right. Well, dude, thanks so much for hanging with us on Recording Studio Rockstars again.
Always a pleasure.
Rockstars, thanks for listening. Matty, let them know, where should they go check out more about you? What if they're ready to just get their song mixed or mastered?
Yeah, well, you can check out the YouTube page, youtube.com/mixandmastermysong.com. And then, of course, my actual site, mixandmastermysong.com. Mixing, mastering services, presets, courses, all that stuff is there. Come check me out. Come say hi. I'm always around.
Awesome. Well, Rockstars, I highly encourage you to go check out Matty's YouTube videos, because there's tons of stuff. We didn't even talk about them. Ones I watched just before this was a great one about the newfangled audio delay plugin. Another one was called Kick Shaper, that I got to go get that plugin now, because
that thing's awesome.
Looks like it's going to make it super fun to mix kick drums, and lots of good stuff over there. So, Matty, look forward to seeing you around the studio again, dude, soon. And Rockstars, thank you for listening.
Thank you, man.
Good to see you, dude. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks so much for listening to Recording Studio Rockstars. If you enjoyed the show and want to help make it better, then please share this episode with your friends on social media and leave a rating and review on iTunes to help the podcast reach more rock stars like yourself. You can click directly over to iTunes or go to rsrockstars.com/review for an easy explanation. And remember to hit the subscribe button to keep up with weekly episodes. And if you're ready to make your best record ever now, then head over to Recording Studio Rockstars Academy, where you can start with my free course at mixmasterbundle.com. Thanks so much for listening, and thanks for being a rock star. I'm Lid Shaw, and this is Recording Studio Rockstars. Now, go make great music. Recording Studio Rockstars would like to give a big thank you to our awesome sponsors who help make this show possible. iZotope, Native Instruments, Atom Audio, Empirical Labs, Sound Porter Mastering, and Trace Audio. And remember to take advantage of our special coupon codes. At iZotope.com and nativeinstruments.com, use the coupon code ROCK10 for 10% off any plugin purchase. At empiricallabs.com, use the code RSR10 for 10% off the Arouser and Big Freak plugins. And finally, use the code RSR15 to get 15% off your custom patch bay labels at traceaudio.com. If you enjoyed Recording Studio Rockstars, please check out our sponsors using the links in our show notes because it's a great way to help support this show. These are all things I highly recommend for your studio, and they're going to help you make your best record ever. I would also like to thank our fantastic team here at Recording Studio Rockstars, Vlad Weselchenko, Braden Stremming, and Liz Hulitskaya. Thanks so much for listening, Rockstars. We'll see you in the next episode. Cheers.